college football stadiums offer some of the greatest atmospheres in all of sports, but when you've got well over 100 FBS teams, you're gonna run into some bad stadiums. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to my top 10 worst college football stadiums 2022 updated. My top 10 list starting from number 10 to number 1. Let's get right into it. And number 10 is the Alamodome, home of the University of Texas, San Antonio. The 25-year-old Alamodome is massive. It has a capacity of up to 64,000 football fans, which doesn't do the UTSA Roadrunners any favors. This year's home opener drew more than 42,000 fans, though that still meant about a third of the stadium was empty for the home opener. The lack of spectators leaves much of the game day atmosphere at the door. The Alamodome gets just 2.5 stars on Yelp. One person saying, "The grading and angles of the stands create too many blind spots. I probably would have been better off watching this game from home." You know, the reason it's on this list for me, I just hate domes, and domes just look so ugly. They really do. It is important to note the Alamodome does have its own bowl. This is where they play the Alamo Bowl in this arena. It is ugly, that's for sure. Moving on to number 9. It is Vanderbilt Stadium. For a private university once called one of the most expensive colleges in America, it's somewhat surprising that Vanderbilt doesn't have a better stadium to host their Commodores. Instead, one of the nation's most beautiful campuses has an ugly stadium built in 1922. That often draws only half-capacity crowds for football. This stadium may be the worst Power 5 stadium in college football. I think it might have gotten a renovation about 2 years ago. It's either this or Northwestern Stadium. I'm telling you, for Power 5, horrible. Built in 1922. It is number 9, Vanderbilt Stadium. Moving on to number 8, it's gonna be Infocision Stadium, home of the Akron Zips, folks. MAC school. So a lot of these MAC school stadiums are worse than Texas high school stadiums. The Akron Zips have been trying to rebuild their attendance numbers that sank following some terrible seasons. Unfortunately, this stadium isn't going to motivate anyone to go to these games. It's an eyesore, it's bland, it's ugly, and yes, there are a lot of high school stadiums in Texas. There's probably elementary school stadiums in Texas that are better than this piece of work. It comes in at number 8. Moving on to number 7, it's going to be Cajun Field, the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Home to the Ragin' Cajuns, Cajun Field has been known for its lack of student section, which contributes to a ho-hum game day experience. The muted enthusiasm levels might help explain the Cajuns' relatively poor attendance numbers in the football-loving state. Now, what jumped out to me with this one is just that horrible exterior shot of the stadium. Like, how ugly does that look? I'll pull it up right now. How ugly does that look? It just looks like a concrete blob. It literally looks like a concrete blob. That's why it's on my list. Louisiana coming in at number 7. Moving to number 6, it's Kelly Shorts Stadium. Yes, folks, that is the name. Central Michigan University, another MAC school. If you had to say with a straight face that you were going to watch football in a place that sounded like a piece of ladies' activewear, you probably wouldn't go to many games either. Just speculating, either way, the people of Mount Pleasant stay home in droves. As watching a barely 500 team on a cold Michigan Saturday with fewer than the FBS minimum 15,000 fans per game sounds far less appealing than watching either Michigan or MSU on TV. The stadium just has nothing to it. Just absolutely nothing. Kelly Short Stadium, Central Michigan University. Moving on to number 6. This is one, when I looked this up, this stadium, it was on every list for worst stadium. It's Rice Stadium, Rice University. Say what you will about Rice Stadium, it's a great metaphor for the city it sits in. Unexpectedly large, ignored by anyone when discussing major places, and altogether an unpleasant place to be for more than an hour. That was a review. Also, it doesn't help that Rice football is terrible. Now, I think they have since limited the capacity. At one point, it was around 70K. I don't know why Rice University would build a stadium with a capacity of 70K. Half of it's going to be empty for basically every game. I think they've limited it a little bit, but it is a complete eyesore. It's way too big. And it comes in at number 5 on the worst stadiums in college football list. Moving to number 4, UB Stadium, another MAC school, Buffalo University. UB Stadium can hold more than 30,000 fans, but Buffalo drew just around 11,000 for their home opener this year. The team's 25-year-old field may have something to do with their lackluster attendance. People rave about how wonderful this stadium is, and honestly, it's a load of bulls. Cracks one Yelper who calls the venue very uncomfortable and pretty average. There's just nothing to these MAC stadiums. There's nothing to it's how does this seat 30,000? Like, where are people sitting? It looks like an elementary school field. Let's be real, folks. It looks like an elementary school field. UB Stadium in Buffalo, New York comes in at number 4. Moving on to number 3, it's going to be Spartan Stadium, San Jose State University. Since their neighbors include some of the top companies in Silicon Valley, you might assume that the San Jose State Spartans play in a palace. Instead, their stadium is tired, to say the least. Plus, the team has AstroTurf. That's minus 100 points. AstroTurf for a college football stadium. Oh, San Jose State Spartan Stadium coming in at number 3 on the list of the worst college football stadiums. On to number 2. Just take a look at this monstrosity. It's Malone Stadium, Louisiana Monroe. Just look at that exterior shot. It just looks so ugly. UL Monroe has the unfortunate combination of a small fan base and a stadium that badly needs a facelift. The 40-year-old field at Malone Stadium is in rough shape even after recent renovations to the scoreboard, playing field, and exterior buildings. That's been renovated? They call it rundown and nasty, smelled like a sewer. No excuse for this. Put some money into your football program, writes one Google reviewer. It is such an eyesore, but folks, it's got nothing on number 1, the number 1 worst stadium in college football. It is the Kibbe Dome, located in Moscow, Idaho. Can you believe that? Moscow, Idaho. This is a true communist work of art. I'm gonna read 2 reviews right now. It says, to the untrained eye, this half cylinder in the middle of Idaho looks like a snow-blown barn or a giant toppled over silo, both of which would probably be better uses than its current one as a football stadium where the home team has won a whopping 3 games. Since 2010, at least the smallest stadium in FBS is indoors. Attendance is a mere 14,000 a game, well below minimum standard. Another review. The Kibbe Dome is one of the smallest and most unusual venues in the NCAA. The 43-year-old stadium seats fewer than 15,000 and has a domed roof made of wood. An opposing coach once famously said the barreled arched building looked like a Campbell's soup can cut in half. The Vandals find it hard to attract great talent to field a competitive football program in Moscow, northern Idaho, and the attendance figures tend to be well below FBS minimums. The reason I put this at number 1 was just because it was so unique. I had to do it. It literally looks like an indoor batting facility for if you're like a baseball player that wants to train in an indoor facility. It literally looks like there would be batting cages in there. This does not look like a football facility at all, and I had to put it at number 1 on my worst college football stadiums list for 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.